Mystikal, a well-known rapper on the wrong side of the law tonight, his third rape arrest over the past 2 decades.
Tonight, Mystikal, whose real name is Michael Tyler, is being held without bond at the Ascension Parish Jail.
I just think it's a f***ed up situation. I ain't really know about the baby mama was the thing. I'm just seeing it like y'all seeing it on as far as social media, but I can't go again. I can't believe no baby mama shit.
This indictment means the grand jury believes there's a probable cause. Mystikal is now charged with first-degree rape, robbery, false imprisonment, and domestic battery. His lawyers were hoping to have a special pretrial hearing, but that seems unlikely now.
You might have to wait a while for the next Mystikal record. The once celebrated rapper now faces a grim reality as shocking evidence emerges in his ongoing legal battles. The disturbing details stem from a July 2022 incident where he allegedly assaulted and violated a woman in his Louisiana home, leading to a cascade of charges, including first-degree R-word and drug possession. With a history of similar accusations haunting his past, Mystikal's future hangs in the balance, as the severity of the evidence uncovered could very well seal his fate behind bars for life. It all began on July 30th, 2022. That fateful day, a woman who was supposedly in a long-term relationship with the legendary rapper dropped by his Prairieville, Louisiana home to hash out some money matters. However, what was supposed to be a civil conversation between two adults quickly turned into a living nightmare. Mystikal started out calm, but somewhere along the way, he lost his cool. According to reports, he believed that the woman had stolen $100 from him, though a small amount of money for someone who made millions. For some reason, the rapper was seriously worked up about the situation. The woman denied it, but Mystikal was hearing none of it. He proceeded to punch, choke, and pull out the woman's hair. He also reportedly took her keys and her cell phone, preventing her from leaving the premises of his house. Terrified and desperate, the victim decided her only way to survive was to help Mystikal search for the missing money, though the money never turned up. What she did find was far more alarming: a stash of crystalline substances hidden in his dresser. In that moment, she realized that the rapper might not be in his right mind. But before she could process this discovery, the situation took another unsettling turn. Mystikal suddenly apologized for his violent outburst, giving her a fleeting sense of relief, though the nightmare was far from over. Mystikal's demeanor shifted drastically once again.
She said that he seemed fine when they were initially talking. At some point, he stepped away, maybe to the restroom. He came back a completely different person.
He told the victim that he needed to cleanse her of evil spirits and proceeded to rub her body with alcohol. He also prayed with her, leaving the woman perplexed about the situation she was in. Unfortunately, even after all he had put her through, Mystikal was far from finished. According to the victim's testimony, the rapper threw her on the bed and violated her in the most degrading way imaginable. And only after he was done did the victim find the opportunity to escape. Well, not before Mystikal demanded the money once more and asked her to pay it back via cashback. However, while she was setting up the payment, the rapper allegedly took the phone back, entered the amount of $150, and sent the payment to himself. Once the victim got her phone back, she went straight to the Baton Rouge General Hospital to get checked out, and the doctors were able to find signs of mistreatment on her body that corroborated her story. And so, officers were called who dropped by Mystikal's place the very next day. This time, there was no chance for him to talk his way out. The charges were severe: first-degree R-word, simple robbery, domestic abuse, battery strangulation, and false imprisonment. More importantly, the police were able to uncover key pieces of evidence at Mystikal's house that supported the victim's testimony. They found clumps of the woman's hair and a broken fingernail at the residence. The rapper was also slapped with 5 drug charges, including possession of Schedule II amphetamine, possession of Schedule IV controlled dangerous substance, 2 counts of possession of Schedule I controlled dangerous substance, and drug paraphernalia. The discovery of this entire stash at his home painted a grim picture, suggesting not just a legal issue, but a deeper, more troubling spiral into addiction. It was a stark reminder of how far Mystikal had fallen from his once glorious career, now overshadowed by the chaos and darkness consuming his life. And so began the rapper's legal battle, a fight he could not easily win. From the moment Mystikal was placed in handcuffs, he claimed innocence, and so did his lawyers. While talking to media outlets, Roy Mon Jr., the rapper's attorney, said, "There has never been any suggestion of domestic violence between them." Unfortunately for him, the judge was not falling for the false claims. And why would he? Between the woman's harrowing testimony and the clues uncovered during the investigation, the evidence was clear as day. Yet, Mystikal's lawyers still hoped that the odds would work in their favor like before, and so they put forward a request of $250,000 for the rapper's bond. But Louisiana State District Judge Stephen Turow refused to let Mystikal off the hook and denied the request for the bond. Roy Mon was not happy. He said, "We are extremely disappointed that the judge decided to hold Mr. Tyler without bond, under the feeling that he could potentially do something else to the victim, and I don't think that's in Mr. Tyler to do that." And so the rapper was forced to spend his days in a prison cell, with the chance to bask under the sun now completely out of reach. Unfortunately for Mystikal, this was just the beginning of his ordeal. In 2023, in a desperate bid to improve his chances, he filed a motion for a gag order. He also switched up lawyers, and his new attorney, Tiffany Miles Crosby, managed to convince the court that Mystikal was set up to lose due to the inordinate amount of publicity the two-time Grammy Award nominee's case has received since his arrest. Cosby believed the entry of such an order was imperative to ensure defendants' right to a fair trial and an impartial jury. And as luck would have it, prosecutors with District Attorney Ricky Babin's office did not object to Crosby's motion, and Judge Stephen Turow of the 23rd Judicial District Court handed down the order during a hearing in Gonzales in 2023. With the gag order enforced, attorneys, law enforcement officials, and potential witnesses are now banned from leaking any details about the case to the media. Same goes for his former attorneys, Joel Pierce and Timothy Yazbek, which is why since then, it's been relatively quiet on the rapper's end. He was scheduled to appear in court in June 2023 for trial, but his attorney filed a motion to delay the hearing since Mystikal's legal team needed more time to come up with a solid defense. However, Mystikal's lawyers seem to be overlooking a crucial fact. This isn't the first time he's committed such a heinous crime. The difference is that before, he managed to escape his fate. Had he faced harsher consequences then, perhaps another innocent life wouldn't have been so brutally traumatized. Back in 2003, Mystikal made headlines after he and his two bodyguards were accused of mistreating a woman. According to the official documents, Mystikal didn't behave any differently compared to the 2022 incident. Even back then, he was worked up about some shady checks that he believed his hairstylist was responsible for behind his back. And so, when she checked in for work like always on July 3rd to braid his hair at his house, he cornered her out of the blue, accusing her of stealing $80,000 from him. Of course, the woman denied doing anything of the sort, but she was already guilty in the rapper's court. And so, with each excuse, Mystikal only grew more furious. In the end, he offered her two ways out of the situation. She could either wait for him as he involved the police, or she could perform oral S on him, and they could forget about the situation and move on like nothing happened. Scared and powerless, the hairdresser felt she had no other option and was coerced into surrendering to Mystikal's demands. But the disturbing situation soon took another twisted turn. Halfway into the act, two of the rapper's bodyguards, Leland Pokey Ellis and Versi V. Carter dropped by, who he had supposedly rang up. He ordered Ellis to bring a video camera to film the heinous act, after which he briefly turned it off and proceeded to violate her again. But the nightmare didn't end there. The camera was turned on once again, and this time, Ellis and Carter proceeded to mistreat the woman, and only then was she allowed to leave, which may have been Mystikal's biggest mistake. The woman ended up going to the authorities on July 4th, who didn't waste a second and dropped by Mystikal's house, arresting him for violating the victim. Once in handcuffs, officers searched through the rapper's home to find incriminating evidence, and as per the victim's testimony, they discovered a safe with the camera inside. Many believed that Mystikal's fate had been sealed at this point, but that same day, authorities received an affidavit signed by the victim through the rapper's lawyer, Gary Harvey, which changed the course of the legal situation. In the affidavit, the woman changed her stance on the situation. She claimed that she was, in fact, not violated and that she had consensual S with the rapper and his two bodyguards. However, on July 10th, she sat down with the investigators and informed them that the affidavit was Harvey's doing, who had managed to convince her that the case was jeopardized. But the truth was far from it. She still wanted to go ahead and prosecute those responsible. And so Mystikal found himself looking at charges of aggravated R-word, which could have landed him in jail for life, if convicted. The odds were not in his favor. However, Mystikal's lawyer, J. David Borland, was working around the clock to get his client out of the mess he had landed himself in. He met with prosecutors, and his efforts bore fruit as the charges were reduced to S battery, which the rapper even pleaded guilty to. And just like that, Mystikal managed to avoid a life in prison. However, his little bubble of happiness popped when his lawyers learned that the prosecution had violated their little agreement by handing over the videotape to presiding judge Anthony Marabella. With their options reduced and trust broken, Mystikal's lawyers filed a motion to withdraw his client's guilty plea. Speaking to the media, Borland said, "My client would not have entered a plea if he knew the tape was going to be shown because it's inflammatory. The tape doesn't reflect the entirety of the events. To be fair, it wasn't entirely the prosecution's fault, as the judge had specifically requested to view the videotape before the sentencing. This led to prolonged negotiations between the defense and the prosecution. In the end, the lawyers chose not to withdraw the guilty plea, fearing that doing so might lead the prosecution to pursue more severe charges. Meanwhile, the prosecution adhered to the original agreement, and Mystikal narrowly avoided the possibility of a life sentence. However, the rapper couldn't escape the 6-year jail sentence that the judge handed out to him, along with the 5 years of probation for extortion. He had to put his career on pause and make peace with the life that awaited him within the confines of a cold, dim-lit room. He also had to live with the S offender label, as the authorities forced him to register himself as one forever, changing the course of his life.
The only way I felt it is because it affected my business commercially. Sponsorships, I can't get no sponsors with that kind of thing. It's an ugly charge. It's ugly. Business has opened back up for me. People can invest in me and work with me again, knowing that I'll be here. It's hard to invest in somebody, if they're going to jail or not, and that's understandable. That's understandable. So, yeah, it feels good, man. It feels good. And I hope I can bring hope to somebody that might be in a similar situation. Man, stay hopeful, stay optimistic. I don't have to have a plan like people say, man, we're going to get paper. They're going to have to sign a paper. I'm not doing that. That means I'm still doing the same thing. I'm just trying to protect myself from the bullshit that can happen from it. How about change the behavior?
Mystikal eventually ended up tasting freedom again in January 2010.
When you come out of prison, was it hard to readjust back to society again?
Boy, I was in such a culture shock. The best way I can explain that, if you ever seen the movie, I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. When the pimp got out and he had his fish tank shoes on, platform shoes, and that's how behind the fashion power curve, behind the culture curve, behind the music, man, I was lost. It took me about a year and a half to kind of readjust to it, because I had totally disconnected what I was doing at that time. I couldn't pay attention to the streets and do that at the same time too. That was just, had to keep my eyes, focus on what I was doing. That's heavy, man. I had to sit in front of the clock and look at 6 years elapse off that shit.
But if there's one thing that we can confidently say about Mystikal at this point in the story, it's that he never learns his lessons. Back then, shortly after being released, Mystikal ended up back in prison for 2 months for violating his parole. What's even worse is that years down the line, Mystikal was implicated in yet another R-word case in 2017. He was charged with violating and kidnapping someone. The rapper tasted the cold air of a prison cell once again, this time for 2 years with his bond set at $3 million. However, some twisted sort of fate seemed to favor him as the charges were eventually dismissed, and Mystikal walked away without paying for any of his crimes. However, this time in his story, Mystikal does not have the luxury of walking away. Between the gravity of his crimes and his rep sheet, the rapper is looking at life in prison if convicted. He's currently being held without bond at Ascension Parish Jail, waiting for the day he gets to appear in court and clear his name. His future is unknown as he tries to get out of the legal trouble he has landed himself in.
Attorneys for Michael Tyler, the rapper known as Mystikal, who has twice faced charges, say the latest case against him is bogus. In an Ascension Parish courtroom Monday morning, Tyler pleaded not guilty to 10 counts, including domestic abuse, battery by strangulation, and false imprisonment.
He's the victim in this circumstance?
He is the victim.
Just like he was last time.
In July, a woman whom he shares an adult child with accused him of violently attacking and when she asked him to give their son money. A warrant details exactly what he's accused of. The woman had cuts, bruises on her arms, leg, face, mouth, and neck, and hair yanked from her scalp. The warrant alleges Mystikal punched her, pulled her braids from her head, took her phone and keys to prevent her from leaving, choked her to the point she could not breathe, and forcibly raped her. But his lawyers say she made it all up when she didn't get her way.
And so, Mystikal's journey from rap stardom to a series of dark legal battles paints a troubling picture of a man unable to escape his past. With damning evidence and a history of similar crimes, his chances of evading justice this time appear slim. As he awaits trial, the rapper faces the very real possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars. This ongoing saga serves as a stark reminder that no amount of fame can shield one from the consequences of their actions, especially when the evidence is as disturbing as what has been uncovered in Mystikal's case.